Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Shanza Khan and I look forward to joining everyone on S Stories. Please join me as I talk about Ion Ivy and college counseling.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Sophiya Anjam. Welcome to yet again another edition of the S Stories right here on my YouTube channel. As the tagline goes, keep the spirit alive. हर जुमे के जुमे आपसे मुलाकात करते हैं 7 बजे शाम को. You know, sometimes there's a specific topic, a specific genre in mind perhaps. Sometimes I want to discuss different things with different people, have a discourse as well. So a couple of days before, I read something and I wanted to share it with you. It goes something like this. The future depends on what we do in the present. So the present is extremely important, how we really gauge ourselves and how we really pace ourselves forward to make a bright future. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's one individual who's in the studios of the S Stories today is a fantastic individual, very enterprising, very talented, very focused and very dedicated. And I was just kidding, I was just playing around a while ago and I was like just kidding with her and I was like, I have a feeling that if I end up like talking about all the credentials and all the feathers in your cap, तो मेरा तो show ही खत्म हो जाएगा. तो मैं काम करती हूँ, मैं आहिस्ता आहिस्ता I will pluck those feathers in your cap and then talk about them one by one and unroll them as we go. So ladies and gentlemen, she is an economist. She is a public policy specialist. She holds a Master's of Arts in Public Policy from Harvard University and was one of the only 2 students to receive a fully funded Dean's Fellowship. Not just that, she was a recipient of the Jane Mansbridge Award and Royal Scholarship. She has over 18 years of experience working with top development organizations including the World Bank, UNICEF, UNDP, and many more. She is the founder and head counselor of Ion Ivy and changing the world as we speak. Presenting Shanza Khan. How are you? Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, Sophie. I'm very embarrassed by the long introduction that you have given.
मैंने कहा अगर मैं पूरी करती तो मेरा तो show खत्म हो जाना था. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much.
My pleasure to have you over. You look lovely. I love what you're wearing, by the way. It's gelling well with the whole studio as well. So how is your day today?
It's going good. Thank you so much for having me over.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Now, before anything else, Shanza, this is kind of like a tradition on my show as well. I like to dig deep down, okay?
Sure.
So I want to know, where were you born in? And what did you study when you were a kid? And, what were you doing when you were growing up?
So I was actually born in New York and my parents moved to Pakistan when I was 2 years old.
Okay.
And originally my parents put me in Bloomfield Hall, but my dadi said that I cannot send a girl to a co-educational place. So I was shifted to Convent of Jesus and Mary.
Oh, lovely.
And I credit what I am today to the education and the disciplines that the nuns gave me.
Absolutely. A lot of my friends are conventarians and my mother is one as well. So she's
lovely.
very proud.
Yes, very
I
proud
tell her that, Mama,
conventarians.
मैं तो LGS गई थी. She's like, LGS क्या चीज़ है? हमसे पूछो, हम जो convent से पढ़े. अच्छा, so I want to know about your family as well. How many siblings do you have? Let's talk about your parents and what did you grew up listening to, hearing about, reading?
So my father is an economist. My mum is, she had her own travel agency. She's retired now.
Okay.
She had her MBA from IBA in Karachi. My parents met initially while they were in PIA, but my father later went into green energy and he was the CEO of a company in Dubai.
Fantastic.
I have an elder brother. He's a cardiologist, settled in the States. And my younger sister, Mashal, who is a graphic designer and works for social causes.
I absolutely love Mashal, by the way. I must plug in my own shout out for Mashal as well. If you're watching, a big shout out to you, Mashal.
So Mashal was at Carvan Crafts Foundation.
Yes.
And it's just the 3 of us. And I got married to 17 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So,
are you kidding? You seem as if you're just like 18 years of age.
My daughter is 15. So that takes care of that.
Huh? Yeah.
And I've got 2 younger ones as well.
Mashallah, that's lovely. So what are their names?
Serena's 15, she goes to TNS.
Okay.
Ahmed is 11, he goes to Learning Alliance.
Okay.
The elder two are in the IB system.
Okay.
And my youngest, my husband insisted, he's an HSonian. So he's he's 8 years old and he's in class 3.
You know, once an HSonian, always an HSonian.
Tell me about it. My brother was also an HSonian, so
I know. My brother, all of my cousins, so high five, sister, right there. There you go. Now, you know, as I was mentioning earlier on as well, that mashallah, you have so many feathers in your cap. So let's talk about your various distinctions in education while graduating.
Because of family circumstances, my mother had cancer, and the 3 of us siblings were parceled off to various relatives because my mother was going really intensive treatment. So I ended up with my chacha in South Dakota.
Okay.
In a small town where the population was 13,000. And the reason he was based there is because he's a psychiatrist and he was heading the mental institute over there.
Right.
So I ended up transferring to a community college over there, and because I had nothing else to do, just studied all the time.
Sure.
So I did an associate's in business administration in 1 year instead of 2.
Okay.
And by that time, my parents had moved to Atlanta, and they had told me that, oh, you can transfer to any university here. So I chose to go to Emory.
Okay.
And loved it. Absolutely loved having a liberal arts education over there.
I'm sure, and I'm sure you must have learned so much and made so many connections and bonded with people, and your perspective of life must have changed altogether.
Absolutely. I think, you know, the biggest advantage was the mentorship given by the professors.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why I went into economics. Yes, my father is an economist and he kind of encouraged me in that direction. But I must say the professors I had were amazing. So my first job was given to me by my professor of macroeconomics. So she had gone to the Federal Reserve Institute, and she took me along with her.
Okay.
So, you know, now when I look back, I always tell students, you know, you should really care for your professors, because the amount of opportunities that they open up for you is amazing.
And that's why you should respect them even
Exactly.
more. That's very important. So now let's talk a little bit about your memberships in a leadership society, something that I was reading about as well.
So that was while I was still in college. So I'm a nerd, Sophie.
You don't need to tell me that. I kind of understood while I was going through your profile.
And I studied a lot while I was in college. It's what I like to do. Even, you know, you were asking what you listen to. It was more of...
And you dodged the question twice. I asked the question twice.
I used to read more. And yes, actually I like to listen to hard rock and heavy metal.
I love that.
But reading is my thing. So while I was at college, I got into the economics honor society.
Right.
And that kind of paved the way for all of these leadership societies and honor societies that you're reading about, because I got into the basically their summa cum laude thesis program.
Right.
And so that paved the way for a lot of these opportunities. So now looking back, I kind of try and guide students the same way on how your life paths can open up in front of you if you just take advantage of the opportunities that the college is giving you.
Absolutely, as they say, strike when the iron is hot, or make hay while the sun shines.
Absolutely.
You have to do that for sure. So, you know, you were living in the US for many years and then you shifted to Pakistan. So I want to really know, how was that shift for you and what were your learnings?
The shift has been very interesting, Sophie. So, you know, I've come back after a while. I had been coming back and forth as well, but now I'm seeing everything from the eyes of my children, which is a very different situation. So I was looking for opportunities for my own kids, particularly my daughter, who at that time was in 8th grade, and asking, you know, what can she do for the summer? What volunteer work can she do?
3 years ago, yes?
This is 3 years ago.
3 years ago, yes.
So actually in grade 7, because she's in grade 10 right now.
Okay.
And they were asking, you know, the counselor was saying, why are you worried about it? Abhi to bahut time hai. And, you know, I was trying to explain to them that I went on a full scholarship. That's the only way my kids can go.
Right.
I cannot afford to pay 100K per year per kid. It's just not happening. We don't have that sort of money. And they said, nahi, come back in A1. That's the time kids start thinking about colleges. And that's very true. So You have educational consultancies in Lahore. ऐसा नहीं है कि that scene is not here.
Of course.
But the trend is that kids go for advice when they're about to apply to college.
And that's late.
That is extremely
Yes.
late. The process in the US starts in class 9.
Right.
When you in fact apply for colleges on the Common App, they will ask you, what have you done grade 9 onwards? List all the activities. And kids do not know this till they're about to fill in their application.
That's a very valid point.
So, you know, that's something that children are just simply not aware of.
Okay.
That everything you have done, whether it's within your school in form of a club or a society,
Sure.
have you been a member, have you been a secretary, have you been the president of a particular
Or any
club?
course that you've attended.
Or
been
any
part
course that you've
of.
attended, have you been part of NUMs, MUNs, inter-school competitions?
Sure.
Everything from class 9 onward
Right.
counts, including your transcript. So, you know, students have to not just wake up later on, because the entire emphasis over here is on grades.
Yes.
It's not on extracurriculars.
Right.
Grades are the bare minimum.
Yes.
And this is something that I try to explain to both parents and students over here. It's not, grades are extremely important. There's no way around
तो
it.
बहुत होता है ना शांजा, नहीं हमारे बच्चे ने फर्स्ट आना है, ए ग्रेड लेना है, बी क्यों आया है, ये कम मार्क्स क्यों आए हैं, हमारे फलां बच्चे से ज़्यादा नंबर आ जाएं. So much of pressure on the kids.
So, you know, that is just one part of the equation, which is why it's very important to assess what drives your child.
Right.
What are their inherent strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
And so, in the US, you know, if your kid was going to school over there, they would be doing personality and career testing.
Okay.
And you can actually do that sitting here in Pakistan free of charge.
How?
There are online links.
Okay.
We are, you know, at Ion Ivy, we happily provide these resources to students. You can sit at home and do them.
Okay, hold on for just a second. So, Eye on Ivy is something that I really want to talk about. I think after this incident, you probably had a few thoughts. Okay, I think I should be starting something of my own here in Pakistan to make life easy for the students. So, tell us about how did you eventually form Eye on Ivy and what exactly does it do?
So, Ion Ivy was formed because of my own daughter's journey.
Right.
And while I was looking around for options for her, I very quickly realized that there was nothing here focusing on profile building.
ठीक है.
Not in a coherent manner in any form. So, while we first figure out what a student is supposed to do,
Right.
what are their inherent strengths, are you a risk taker,
Right.
are you good in management, are your skills geared towards art,
Sure.
computers, whatever it is. Once we've identified that through multiple testing, and a kid can do that, as I said, free of charge online, and we're happy to guide them towards that path. For the next 3 years, class 9, 10, 11, we make sure that all the extracurriculars that a student is supposed to do
Right.
is aligned with their academic passion.
Right.
So, if you're planning to go towards med school, you should be interning, for instance, at Shanza Khan. You should be volunteering at Chuktai labs, stuff like that. If you are planning to be an economist, then you are better off interning at Akuhat, Risk. So, places like that which are aligned with your academic
Absolutely.
passion.
And also, if you're confused, then you can always ask so many questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that in class 9 and class 10, give them real world experiences, allow them to shadow professionals so they actually see what does a day in the life of X actually look like.
Sure.
So if you're thinking of a career as an RJ, a perfect opportunity would be shadow Sophie.
Sure.
Can you keep up with those hours? Can you keep up with that pressure?
Of the trade.
It's not as easy as professionals make it look. So it's very important to get your feet wet.
Sure.
And just get an idea of that field.
Of course, that makes sense. But okay, so now comes a very important point, which is teacher training. So, I think it's very important for teachers to also be trained enough to guide their students accordingly, parents and teachers. What are you doing about that?
So, particularly jo aapne mention kiya parents. Parents are key in this process. And as a parent, I sometimes feel are not integrated into the decision making of how if a school does have a counselor.
Yeah.
And the elite schools over here do have counselors.
They do.
They don't take the parents on board, in terms of planning for the kid.
They're completely alienated?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Over here, schools have an interest we want to send our student abroad.
Sure.
Right? That's how a school gets its accolades. Right?
Of course.
Okay, you know, we've sent our child to Yale, we've sent our child to Brown, we've sent our child to Oxford. So there is this inherent pressure on a school to send their child overseas to the top names.
Right.
As a parent, I would want to be part of that process. Why? Because the financial element, number one, is key.
Right.
Now, as a parent, when we get parents on board, this is not the US, Sophie. Okay? If I was a teenager in the US, I would be taking out a loan and going to college, and my parents would not have much of a say in the process.
Absolutely.
But this is Pakistan. Parents, number one, have a very intrinsic role to play in what profession their child is going to go into. And yes, we still have that mindset that hamara bacha doctor, engineer or lawyer banega.
Yes.
You know, those are still those three kind of traditional career paths that we want our children to pursue.
ladki hai to wo teacher banegi.
Exactly. The other is the financial element. So what we try and tell the schools, but why we work with parents as a policy is that everyone needs to be on the same page.
Sure.
So we have parents involved in that process from day one. We often realize that not even both the mother and father are on the same page. The mother may be very well saying, I give my child the leeway to, you know, experiment and find their true path.
Right.
And the father would be saying, if I'm sending my son abroad, he had better be doing engineering.
Of course.
So, you know, it's very important that from day one, both of the parents and the child are on the same page.
On the same page, and I think we really need to build that kind of culture
Exactly.
here in our part of the world. I love that. So I was reading about the fact that you have a lot of current competitions going on as well, international competitions. So let's talk about those competitions.
So these competitions partly fall into what we call profile building, Sophie, and we have made a conscious decision to go into this area. It wasn't part of the services we offered before.
Right.
And the basis and initiation for this was because when we wanted to send our profile builders to different international competitions, we very quickly realized that Pakistan was simply not registered as an entity to do so. Let me give you an example.
That's unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. Yes. So a couple of years ago, we wanted to send our child to take part in SEMO. This is a Southeast Asian Mathematical Olympiad.
Okay.
And when we looked at the website, we saw that Nepal bhi registered hai, Kazakhstan bhi registered hai, Mongolia bhi registered hai, but Pakistan ka naam aur nishan hi nahi hai. And in the process of trying to get our profile builders and students to these competitions, I actually took a step back and said, why just our students? Why not open the door for any Pakistani, whether in the public sector or in the private sector, who wants to participate? And so we made alliances and country partnerships with a wide array of organizations around the world, whether it is the Singapore SEMO, the Canadian Caribou Mathematics Competition, the English Language KGL competition, which is prepares you for SAT and IELTS and so on, or the Bulgarian Creative Writing competition.
Lots of choices and a variety right there.
The whole model being there is no one size fits all.
Sure.
So at the high school level, you should be playing to your strengths.
Right.
So if you are planning to pursue a career in English or journalism, you should be participating in these English language competitions, or a multitude of them, or whatever essay competitions you can get your hand on. So for instance, Queen's Commonwealth competition hota hai and so on. Schools do not necessarily give you all the information out there.
Right.
This is where Eye on Ivy comes in.
So that is where you're bridging the gap. Actually.
We are bridging the gap.
Right.
We tell you, if you are an aspiring artist, what are your options? If you're an aspiring engineer, what are the whole gambit of opportunities nationally and internationally that you can do? And we work with your academic calendar. So this is where the one-on-one kind of thing comes in. But coming back to competitions, before we got here, there were only 2 competitions taking place in Pakistan, international level wale. One was the kangaroo, and I don't know how in sync you are with the high school and school systems over here.
Of course, because it's on the news also, na?
Right, and the other was the hippo.
Make it a point that it should be on the news also.
Yeah. But a school has to be registered in order for a student to take that kangaroo.
Okay.
Now, as I told you, I'm a proud conventarian.
Right.
And convent, despite everything, I would say all it has given me, is cheez mein wo thoda sa conservative hai. Not all schools give you these opportunities. You would say it's the elite private schools which are registered for the kangaroo. So let's say I'm not from one of these schools.
Okay.
Now I can actually go to the website for any of these competitions, register directly and participate.
That is brilliant.
So we have broken down the barrier to entry.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Some applause right there.
That is
This
something I'm
fantastic.
proud of.
Yes.
The school can no longer hold you back.
That is an incredible achievement. You've made it accessible for so many students across the country.
Exactly. So we are working with schools. We
Okay.
are telling them, listen, we understand COVID situation ke saath,
Yeah.
schools are having trouble finishing their curriculum.
Right.
I understand that hat.
Right.
So as a parent, what I would request schools is, listen, we know this is going on. We know you have real issue.
Right.
If you don't want to roll this out as a school, we completely understand.
Yeah.
But let that student and that parent know that this is an option. So, as I say, my own daughter, she likes doing photography.
Sure.
I can understand that a school does not specifically want to even announce कि ये photography competition हो रहा है, because they have so much else going on their plate.
और वो कॉलेज में ज़्यादा करते हैं ना
Right,
ऐसी चीज़ों
right.
को. हाँ.
So this is something, as a parent, I'm pushing. Let the parents know कि ये options आपके पास हैं, and leave it up to them.
You choose accordingly.
You
then.
choose
always have a
accordingly.
choice.
Exactly. So in fact, on photography, one partnership we recently made is with Quill and Scroll.
Okay.
So this is an international journalism society based out of the US.
Right.
We are the very first chapter in all of South Asia.
All right.
And we have purposely gone and made that partnership. Why? Because we want to encourage kids in this realm. Now, inka apna contest hua tha just a couple of weeks ago. The deadlines for them wrapped up, and we had very poor participation from Pakistan. I'll tell you why. We have very few journalism societies in high schools. So we have spoken with them and said, listen, we want to encourage students to do more. One of the eligibility criteria was you should have been published in order to put that piece forward.
Right.
How many kids get that opportunity to be published in Pakistan? So we said, okay, we hear where you are.
Yeah.
Help us get there.
Yeah.
So now we're negotiating with them. Please have a specific competition for Pakistan where those kids who are unpublished can also participate. So this is what I mean by bridging gaps.
Of
in our
course.
society. We have a long way to go.
So accessibility and reach for
Accessibility and
everybody.
reach for everyone.
Wow, that's brilliant. I love it. And I wish that we could carry on the conversation as well, but unfortunately time is running short. How about a part B? Promise to do part
Sure,
B?
absolutely.
I think
Anytime, would love
that
to.
should definitely be it. But I think कि part B करते करते माशाल्लाह और इतने ज़्यादा feathers आपके आ जाने. अच्छा, so lastly, before I ask you for your take-home message for everybody as well. So you've also won some awards recently. Let's talk about that just in a nutshell, please.
So I'm very proud to say that Ion Ivy got the Startup Award of the Year
Bravo.
by the International School Awards based in Dubai, and it was on our model. One can say, how can you get an award so soon? And for me, transparency and accountability is everything. Is key, Sophie. So I lose a lot of clients after my first meeting. And the reason for that is because we say outright, we will not lie, we will not make up stuff. If you haven't done it, it will not be there. And so we will not fudge information. Unfortunately, there is a tendency to do that here. And I tell the students, how can you be proud of, let's say you got admission into that college. Is that something which would truly give you that satisfaction if it was not on your own merit? So, I'm extremely proud of having gotten that recognition at a global level for our platform. For something like
That's
this,
lovely, Shanza, because I feel you're also broadening the horizons of people, building fresh perspectives in life, and I think that is brilliant. So thank you so much once again for joining us today. But what would be your take-home message for everybody watching this right now?
So my take-home message for everybody right now would be, for parents, it would be, please discover the strength of your child, and the process needs to be done early on. In middle and in primary and middle school, studying should be fun. It should not be a burden. And so these competitions serve to get students excited about what all is out there. You get certificates, you get medals, But at the high school level, this is the time to get serious about what your child should be doing, when they're planning to go to college. So please start thinking about the process class 8, class 9 onwards, because that is frankly, we're competing with the Indians, we're competing with the Chinese. It's not just other schools. So don't think about, my cousin is doing X in LGS versus my sister is doing Y in convent. You are competing with the Indians and Chinese when you're going overseas. So you need to build your profile from now. And on a parting note, Sophie, one big consideration that we get, legitimate consideration from parents, is the financial element of all of this. And I want parents and students out there to know finances should not be a barrier. This is something I very strongly advocates. There are now so many country partnerships that Pakistan has with countries around the world, whether it is Turkey, whether it is Malaysia.
Yes.
I believe in a fully funded education. So we help you reach your goal on whatever that may be. If you cannot finance an education, if you get a 50% scholarship to a university in the US and have a 100% scholarship to another country, I think that's a good problem to have. That's a problem I want every parent to have, so that they can sit down as a family and decide what's best for them.
Fantastic. Well, you definitely touched upon a lot of points. I would say bravo, Shanza. Okay, Shanza
Thank
for
you.
president.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Keep up the great work and looking forward to a lot happening from your side as well.
Thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you so much for having me here
My
today.
pleasure, my pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this episode of the S Stories, and we talked about a lot of different tiers, and I feel that, just talking to Shanza just made me realize that there are so many loopholes in different sectors in Pakistan. But when it comes to education, I think what Ion Ivy did was to bridge the gap, made it accessible and made everything reach out to people that they didn't even know exist in the first place. So I would suggest go to the social media pages, join their platforms, lend them the support and be part of this change. As they say that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. So think about that. Have a great evening and see you guys next week. Allah Hafiz. Bye-bye.